Good morning. This is Belinda with Belinda's Baubles, and this is a special, it's not an out and about, it's not necessarily a tutorial, but I'm going to share with you how I make my favorite skirt. I've made only one, but I am wanting more, and it's a way for me to turn jeans that fit me pretty well, that I have worn holes in the backside of, into a skirt. I am not a seamstress, I am not a sewist, and I will fully admit that here because if you've watched any of my regular knitting and crochet vlogs, you'll know sewing stresses me out. I do it maybe once or twice a year and that's it, but when there's something that I really want, yeah, I think I can hack it for something simple. So if you just have some basic sewing skills, and even if you don't have any basic sewing skills, go watch another video on YouTube that gives you some basic sewing skills, and you should be able to do this too. Still working on my coffee. I had the morning off from work, so I wanted to see if I could get this done. We are getting ready to have a little weekend away because I have transferred from one store to another after 9 years, and it happened to coincide with a 4-day weekend I had, which I've shortened to a 3-day weekend because where we were going, unfortunately, they're sick. Okay, so this is my favorite skirt. It is using a pair of old jeans. So this way I have all my pockets. Some fabric, and this fabric even has an edge on it. So I didn't even have to hem. I hate hemming. Have I told you I hate sewing? So I'll put a little video in here and show you me out and about this last summer in my skirt. Okay, I'm back. All right, to make this skirt, all you need is, depending on how flared you want it, I usually use enough to wrap around my hips, 1.5 to 2 times. A couple of different fabrics. One I won this past summer, and it was for making bags and stuff, but it's so pretty. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? And I didn't want to use it. Sorry if I've been looking down. It's a bad habit. But I didn't want to use it for bags because I figured it would make a great summer skirt. So this is just a yard of fabric. It's probably, width is probably a standard 44, 45. And what I'll end up doing with it, because a yard is not going to wrap around my hips, but if I cut it in half, that much fabric, or let's see, which way would I cut it? Actually, yeah. After I take the salvage edges off, that is enough lengthwise for a skirt. I can cut it in half, sew the pieces together, which that is what I did with this one. It's got side seams, gathering at the top, and then I sewed it together. Let's see if I can get that over to you. I sewed it together twice. Now this skirt, it took me a little going through. First time I got it all sewed together, I was all excited. It was inside out. So I had to pick the whole thing out and redo it. Put that over there. I've not been real careful about making sure everything is exact. And you know what? When you're wearing it, you cannot tell. I love the edging on this. I get compliments in it every time I wear it, and it's just so comfortable. So with this skirt, you can make it, depending on your size, in anywhere from a yard to probably 1.5 yards. Just figure, depending on if you want it below the knee or if you want it to close to the ground. Below the knee, 1 yard, and I wear a size 14-16 US. So 1 yard is enough for me when I cut it in half. You just have to make sure that your print is something that you can cut it in half and sew the side seams. Then what you also need, I'll show you this in a second. Sorry. What you also need is some old jeans. I have a couple of different options here. These fit me really well in the waist. They have this great little detailing on them and on the pockets. But they're too long and the legs are so wide that they make me look wider. And I really don't need that. So this is one pair that I have a plan for. This is what I'm going to use with the summer fabric. Really pulls that periwinkle out, I think. But I've already cut the tops off, and I've already washed all this fabric, so you definitely want to wash your fabric before you do any cutting or anything, to make sure it's, it's going to shrink up as much as it's going to shrink up. Okay, so this, I've already cut the legs off. Just a simple, you can see I didn't even get real careful with it because no one's going to see that part. And I will show you how I did this in just a moment. But I have that ready to go with this. But that's for the summer. It's fall. Even though I'm in sleeveless, our little freeze is gone here in Texas that we had, our short one. And so it's already warming up again. So then I have just some regular jeans. But as you can see, they are well worn. And there's some holes back here. But the top is still good. The legs are good. And I use the legs for Dodgy bag bottoms. They make great Dodgy bag bottoms. That way you can just kind of throw them on the ground or wherever. So this is my way of upcycling or recycling my old jeans. And I'm going to have quite a few new skirts because I bought my jeans pretty much at the same time. I wear them for work. And so I have about 3 pair that are either getting holes or about to get holes. Which means I get to shop for new jeans. I hate shopping for new jeans. They're never the size that you want them to be. Plus, I'm 5'4". I'm not petite. I'm not average. So my legs always curl up because in the 70s, they didn't have petite. They didn't have any of the different sizes. Everyone was tall and skinny, and I was not tall. I may have been skinny at that time, but I hated hemming my jeans. Hence why these have never been hemmed. I hated hemming my jeans because you could always tell, because we didn't have any way of making it look like they were done, and so then they looked like there was something wrong with you. You know, kid issues. You didn't want to look like you had handmade clothes, and now we all want handmade clothes. We're never happy, are we? Okay, so I am wanting a fall skirt, and I found this fabric on sale at Hobby Lobby and fell in love with it. It's actually corduroy. It's just a thin corduroy. And the flowers kind of reminded me of clothes I had as a kid in the 70s. Give you a little better view of it there. And I've gotten more than I need of this because I fell in love with it. So, it also has this great fringy edging, which did fine in the wash, and I really like it. So I'm not going to have to hem this skirt. Are you getting a theme here with me and hemming? All right, so like I said, I got way too much of this. So I think I got 2 yards of this, and I do not need 2 yards. Except for the fact that I wanted it longer. So in that case, I did need 2 yards. Because I'm not going to have the side seam on this one. I'm going to cut, I figured out that I need to cut about 14 inches off of it. And so what that means is I can have a matching Dodgy bag. So I'm going to cut 14 inches off. It should come down to close to around my ankles. That way it's easy to move around in, and after it's gathered and everything, it'll have a little bit of a fluff to it, but not too much. And I'll be nice and comfy. And I figured, I don't know. What do you think? It's got a black background, but it does have these brown, beige, coppery colored flowers. I'm going to have a look at this and decide whether or not I want to add a little bling to this skirt or go plain. All right, so I've got the bed cleared off behind me so that I can do some cutting back there. So come along and join me. One of the nice things about this skirt is you do not have to be super exact. So I'm kind of just marking this with my scissors while I double check on this side. And I know I'm going towards this orange flower over here. Look and see, yeah, where I'm headed. So it's kind of great with all these flowers and everything. I've got a pretty good idea of where to start. My Crochet Luna little charm on my sewing scissors. Am I sure about that? That doesn't quite look right. I do have the fabric doubled over, and it doesn't quite look right. Okay, I'm going to check it again. Middle of that flower. Yeah, this petal here. because that's where I'm headed. Here goes. If I can see you. There's the skirt part. Okay, so the front is a little lower than the back. Let's see if I can get this over here to you. Just the way it comes on here, because you've got your back side in there. So in order to get your flat end, do not put the waistbands together. Just let the waistbands fall the way that they normally would. Flatten it out and pull the crotch area up a little bit because you've got all that extra fabric. You want to make sure you're going below the zipper. And then just head across. After I get to the halfway mark, I do fold mine over so that I can continue and be somewhat close. But I'm going by the underside. All right, so here's what I have left. And I'm just going to cut these apart. And these are now ready to become Dodgy bag bottoms. So they're going to go back in the fabric drawer. And this is ready to become a Dodgy bag. Because I really don't have purses, all I have are Dodgy bags. I apologize if I've been bouncing you around a little bit, because you are sitting on the bed. It looks like a mini skirt, but it won't be. Okay, full disclosure, after looking at it against these, I think I've got too much fabric here. So I'm going to take about 1 inch off. I may regret that later, but since, as I said, this is just a Dodgy skirt, I just don't want it, I don't want to where the gathers are to be too low across my backside. Okay, since I'm not somebody that sews a lot, I just have a very basic machine. This is a Singer 5830C, and this is just a student sewing machine. Sam bought this for me when we first got married. There was a special at Big Lots where they were selling them for $100, and it's so I've had this for 25 years. Yes, it needs to be cleaned, but I just don't use it that often. Just a very, very basic options. The things that we'll be using is the zigzag and the straight edge. Other than that, we really won't be using much of it. All right, let me get you set up. So while I've said I am not a seamstress or a sewist, I do have some very basic skills. I'll put a picture in here of a jacket that I actually made for our son Seaver when he was in high school. He still wears it, even though we've had to kind of, he can't button it together or anything. I mean, he's a grown man now instead of a teenager, but he loves it still. It was something that he really wanted. I'm glad I made it for him, but I made him cut it out. I also had him sit across from me while I was making it, and I was making my mistakes, and I was grousing, and I was complaining, and I was stressed out. I can do it. I just don't like it. So, I am going to take the cut fabric, make sure I have the correct edge to the bottom. I'm going to turn it inside out, and we're just going to make one seam that I will probably put in the back, or maybe on one side. I don't know. You could do either. It's totally up to you. I'm more concerned with the bottom meeting than the top. And I just have some clips in here that I got from Temu. This is actually my first time using these. So they're a bit stiff. Okay, so we've got them clipped together there. And I'm just going to do a 5/8 allowance. And for me, I always go over my edges. Sorry, probably a bad angle here. Yes, hello. I always go over my edges twice. At this point, if you wanted to, you could go iron your seams open. Am I going to? No. I will split them open though for going around the top. Okay. So I am dealing with a little, it's a light corduroy, so it's not real heavy. So gathering should still be okay. But to do the gathering, I need to do a larger stitch. So I normally do my stitches on a 1.5 to 2 on my dial, and I'm going to go up to a 3.5. It's still straight stitch, but I want it to be able to gather. And to do this, when I actually sew, will be the 5/8 line. So for doing the gathering, I'm going to start at the seam, but I'm on here. Let me bring you over for a second. So I'm just going to go on the edge of the fabric to do my gathering stitch, because I'm going to be pulling on this stitch to pull the gathers together. And I'm just checking to make sure that this is still kind of on the loose side, and that if I pull, it will gather. Yeah. Can you see that? Be back there a little bit. I'm just pulling on the top thread very carefully, and it's puckering nicely. Oops, sorry, you can't see that, can you? It's puckering nicely. So I'm going to pull it back apart. Okay, we've made it back around, and I'm going to make sure that I do not sew over the original thread, because I don't want to lock it in place. So now we have a very loose thread here. And I am going to take the top hopefully. Where am I at? Find all my threads. Where's this one? Where's my other top thread? Aha! Knew I was missing one. Okay. I'm going to take my top one and I'm just going to pull. See how it's gathering there? And you don't want to pull too hard or you will break your thread. But we're just going to kind of shove this around a little bit. And I'm going to do this all the way around the skirt. This is going to take a little bit of time. And what we're doing is we're just making a seam area here, or a gathered area that we're going to sew over top of later. It's not going to be right on top of each other, so you're going to want it kind of loosely done. But what you do want to do is make sure that you pull it all the way around so it'll be somewhat even, and that it still goes around your hips, because that's where it's going to fall. Okay. I'm going to sit here and work on this, and I will catch up with you in a little while. Once you've gone around gathering, and you've gathered all the way around, then you want to put it up against your jeans to find out if you need to gather more. Don't worry about how even it is right now, because you can even it up shortly. Right now you just want to find out how your edges are looking together. And I've over gathered a couple of inches, and that's actually good because it's easier to ungather than it is to gather. Okay, so find my side seam, which is where I started from. And I'm just going to loosen it a little bit. Check it again. And don't forget to allow a little extra for the very front there, where the crotch was. Still a little bit more. Okay, so now I'm matching. Now I just want to kind of even up my gathers, because there's going to be some places I have more, and especially where I just loosened it just now. So I'm just going to kind of lightly even it out. You just don't want them all puckered in one area, because we're going to be sewing over these gathers. And this is where you have to be careful that you have the correct edges together. I did not last time. And decide where you want your seam. If you've got side seams, because you've just used 1 yard of fabric, just make sure your sides are lined up with the pants top. I just have the one seam, since this is a longer one, and I've decided I'm going to have that on the side. Now I did not tie off the edge, because just in case I need to tighten or loosen once I get this all together. So I'm going to find my side seam. And I'm going to put right sides together. So I'm going to put the pants inside. And I'm going to line up my side edge here and clip that. And as you're going around clipping, you can kind of even it out however much you want to. But we're just going to clip these edges together. And at this point, you know, we've got this little tabby area here from the crotch. I am going to cut across that area right there. So as I came around, I still have it a little too tight. So I'm going to loosen some of these gathers still. And probably end up loosening it a little bit too much and having to regather some more. It's just a little bit of an adjustment game. Yep, over loosened. Okay, so here's part of my problem. Why it loosened up too much is my thread undid on the one side. So even though it's not sewn in for about an inch here, I can still hand gather that without an issue. Okay, now that we've got it clipped together, you're going to find that there's still some puckering and stuff going on. And you're going to need to do a little bit of adjusting as you go along. You just want to get as close as you can. And let's see if we can't get this sewn together before I have to go to work. The first time I made this, I only sewed around it one time. The first time I sat down, I split that seam. So, what I have learned is I have a stitch on here that's a zigzag and a straight line. I need that stitch. And for my sewing machine, that means I have to go, it's a red stitch, so I have to go to my red line. That will give it a little bit of extra reinforcement. And still, even after that, I'm going to go around it one more time. So I'm actually going to sew it together twice. And I'm still going to lift it up a little bit when I sit down, just to be on the safe side. Okay, let me get adjusted here. And I am doing the 5/8 seam allowance. Which on most sewing machines is the longest guideline. At least here in the US. Okay, I'm noticing that the stitch is just a little too tight, so I'm widening my zigzag. So I'm seeing that the jeans are coming up a little too high right there, and so to adjust it, I'm just going underneath the fabric and pulling a little bit underneath. Okay, so we're coming up to the end. Here is my end. So I just have this little bit left. So I'm just making sure that it will stretch and not pucker on the denim side. And so I've got just a couple of puckers here I'm doing manually. And I'm back to the beginning. There we go. Still had a string attached there. Okay, so now I just want to go through and make sure that all my seams are attached. No holes. And I'm not seeing any holes. Okay, now I am going to go through and reinforce this, but I've got to get to work, so I won't have a chance to do it right now. But I have a skirt, and I want to try it on for you real quick. So that is it. Skirt's a little bit longer than what I had wanted. I can always hem it up if I want to. Otherwise, you know, it's around the middle of my shoes. That's not so bad. I'm going to go back through and sew it together a little bit more. So, I mean, it'll actually come up a little bit more when I put that extra row of stitches in if I need to. And that'll make it to where it's a little bit shorter. But, oh, it's comfortable. I love it. And I have a new skirt, and it took me about an hour and a half, even with talking to you guys. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. This is my favorite skirt. This is Belinda with Belinda's Baubles. Please do like and subscribe if you want to see more content. Usually this is knitting with a little bit of crochet in, and again, a little bit of sewing every once in a while. Just a little bit. All right. Thanks for joining me on my journey.